This is a deep one, this. I'm sharing this with you today because I believe transformation is far more than just surface level changes or quick fixes. It's about self-awareness, identifying the self-destructive habits that are holding us back and replacing them with habits that allow us to reach our full potential. Built Different is about making success a repeatable process, developing personal effectiveness, and creating lasting change from the inside out. It's about doing the real work to rebuild our mindset, our habits, and ultimately our entire approach to life. Many of you might know me as a transformation coach, but today in the first episode, I'm sharing something that goes way beyond just fitness or business. This is a story of how I rebuilt myself mentally, physically, emotionally, and the process that has made it all possible. A year ago, I found myself trapped in my own mind, riddled with self-doubt, destructive thoughts, and an identity I no longer recognized. I had spent so much of my life chasing goals, thinking that that's what success was about, but for the first time, I wasn't moving forwards anymore. I was completely lost. And I know I'm not alone in that feeling. We all hit those moments, those points where we question who we are, what are we doing, and where are we heading. But through that struggle, I learned a process for transformation, one that didn't involve just adding new things to my life. It was about eliminating the things that no longer served me and instilling the habits that would truly move me forward. True transformation doesn't happen just by adding more. It happens when you remove what's holding you back, when you learn to reprogram your mind to focus on what truly matters, when you build discipline into every area of your life, and when you make success something you can repeat every single day. This podcast is broken down into 4 phases, each focusing on a different aspect of transformation. In each phase, I'll share a quote to summarize the key idea and concept, explain the concepts in further detail, and then share my personal story to bring it all together. So let's dive into how I did it and how you can apply these principles into your own life. Phase 1, the collapse and destroying of my old identity. The hardest part of transformation isn't growth, it's destruction. People think about change in terms of adding new things, new habits, new routines, new goals. But the truth is, real change starts with letting go. Letting go of comfort, letting go of the old identity, letting go of everything that was once familiar. Because to build something new, you have to break down everything that no longer serves you. And that destruction is genuinely the hardest part of it all. At this point, everything seemed to be falling apart. I wasn't just dealing with my mind, I was under stress from every single angle. I had an off-plan apartment in Manchester that I couldn't get a mortgage on. I was running up bridge loan expenses every single day with no end in sight. I'd also just split up with my long-term partner of 4 years, and on top of that, I was dealing with my own health issues that forced me to take a step back from bodybuilding. And to top it off, my dad had recently been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Everywhere I looked, I didn't see a positive, I didn't see a way out. My whole identity had been built around being a bodybuilder for almost 10 years. Everything I was, everything I identified with, was based on vanity. It was based on how big I was or how good I looked. But beyond bodybuilding, I also identified myself as a coach. That was how I defined myself. I spent years at building that reputation, my brand of Team XL, and my entire life revolved around this version of me. And at this point, I'd been living in Dubai for 2 years, and I was completely lost, hating every second of where I was. I went from being a very big fish in a small pond in the UK to a small fish in a massive pond in Dubai, surrounded by the best bodybuilders and the most successful coaches on the planet. I knew I should be seeing it as inspiration, but all I saw was me not being good enough. I felt like I was genuinely drowning, comparing myself to everyone around me every single day. And here's the hardest part of it all. On paper, I had everything. A successful business that I ran with my partner, an amazing life that was self-made. I was living in the city of my dreams. I was earning a fantastic living, being my own boss, living life on my own terms. The list goes on. But that's the thing. Even though I had everything on paper, I could never see it. I felt so guilty for not being happy. I couldn't ever be present. I couldn't ever even consider being grateful for everything I had. I kept asking myself, why can't I be happy with all this? If not this, then what is it going to take to make me happy? And that was the hardest thing to admit, that I had everything in life that I wanted, yet I was so unfulfilled. I felt like I was living a lie, and I didn't know who I was anymore. My identity had been so tied up in external things, my success as a coach, my physique, the life I created. I just couldn't see beyond it. So to wrap this section up, the collapse, as I like to call it, is about destroying everything that no longer serves you, including the identity that you've built so far. But it's also the start of rebuilding and of creating space for new, more aligned versions of yourself. But this is where the real work begins, building a new identity, one that's not defined about what's external, but what's internal. And it started with letting go of the old version of myself, even though it felt like I was losing everything at that moment. Phase 2, isolation and self-discovery. You will never know who you really are until you remove everything that isn't you. Most people never get clarity on who they actually are because they never create space for it. If you're constantly surrounded by distractions, you'll never hear your own thoughts. Isolation is very uncomfortable, but it's the only way to truly reset your mind. So after everything had collapsed, I started over, and I mean from scratch. It was just me and Chai. I stripped everything back, no distractions, no routines, absolutely nothing familiar. I had to let go of bodybuilding, at least in the way that I knew it. I had to accept that I was no longer that person. Those first few weeks right after the breakup were some of the toughest of my life. You have to imagine these were times when I couldn't sit a single night on my own. My headspace was so bad, I was completely spiraling. But I knew I had to go through it. I didn't distract myself with Netflix or social media. I didn't go out drinking or partying. I sat with myself every single night. And when I say every single night, I truly mean it. I knew I had to get comfortable with my own company again. I started doing things that would have not made sense for the old me. I started a running club. I joined a kickboxing gym. I was doing things that forced me entirely out of my comfort zone. Now, bear in mind, at the peak of my gaining, I couldn't even walk without stopping because of back bumps and shin splints from bodybuilding. For me, it was about finding a new goal, something that would challenge me physically, as I knew I wasn't going to get stronger or bigger like I had in bodybuilding because I was no longer on anabolics, but I had to channel my discipline and focus elsewhere. During this process, I dropped 15 kilos, going from the heaviest at 110 kilos down to 95 kilos. And it felt heartbreaking at the time. It felt like utter regression. I was used to seeing my size as success, and now I felt like I was shrinking by the day. But this was never about muscle. It was about learning who I was underneath, all of the external things that I'd always relied on for validation. In this time, I found a book called Manifest by Roxy Nafouzi. And this was the first time I felt hope. It wasn't about manifesting in the traditional sense. It was about self-development, growth, and working on myself internally. The book gave me a framework to live by, a way to channel my energy into becoming a better version of myself. The book changed my mindset so much. It led me to get a tattoo on my forearm, a sleeve that represented the 7 chapters of the book, each chapter making up part of the sleeve to act as a constant reminder of how much Manifest symbolized my turning point in life. I needed a permanent reminder of the transformation I was going through, something I could always look at to remind myself of the work I was doing, even on the days I didn't want to. Most people go through life and never truly know who they are, or why they do the things they do, or why they act the way they do. I had to uncover that for myself. It didn't happen overnight, but I started having the odd good day. Then those days started to become a little bit more frequent, and eventually I was able to string together whole periods of feeling good within myself all over again. So to wrap up this section, isolation and self-discovery, as I call it, is about stripping away the distractions, the habits, and the old version of yourself that just no longer serve you. It's about being alone. It's about facing yourself, understanding who you truly are, away from all the external labels, and learning to embrace discomfort. But this is where real transformation begins, learning to rebuild yourself from the inside out. It's about creating a new identity, one that's not tied to what you've achieved or what others think of you, but grounded in who you are and who you're becoming. And for me, it all started with just letting go of my old identity that I'd clung on to for so long. Even though it felt like losing everything, that's the hard part. For me, it was the beginning of feeling real freedom again. Phase 3, rewiring the mind, breaking old patterns. Your mind will always follow its strongest patterns until you change them. By the age of 30 years old, 95% of the way we think, feel, and act is controlled by our subconscious mind. If you don't consciously break the old patterns, you'll repeat the same behaviors time and time again, even if you've got new goals. Rewiring your mind is about transforming the subconscious patterns in your brain, but it's really not an easy process. It requires consistent repetition, month after month, of daily practice to make that shift. Once I saw how much self-development had shifted my mind, I became utterly obsessed. The change wasn't immediate, but I felt it happening little by little. I wasn't out the woods yet, but I knew something was shifting and I had to fully understand it. And that's when I came across Joe Dispenza's work, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And as soon as I understood the concept of neuroplasticity, which is the concept that the brain is literally capable of rewiring itself, I became completely obsessed. I realized that my bodybuilding discipline didn't just have to stay in the gym. I could apply it to my mind, to my business, to every part of my life. This is when I started stacking mental resilience tasks into my daily routine. Things like ice baths, ridiculous HIIT cardio workouts where I'd sit at 190 beats per minute for half an hour straight, meditation work, breathwork practices, affirmations, journaling, you name it, I did it. At first it was brutal, but what I was really doing was training my nervous system. I wasn't just doing these practices for physical benefits, but for the purpose of rewiring my brain, building new neural circuits and forcing my body to operate in a completely different state of being. To many of you listening, you might think this is a little hippie or a little bit airy-fairy. And to be honest, I thought that was too, trust me. But I embraced it all because the change was undeniable in myself and it was showing so much in every area of my life. I began to treat it with the same discipline I did for bodybuilding. I didn't miss a single day. Even when it felt uncomfortable or entirely unnecessary, consistency was always the key. But so your listeners understand it, here's what I learned through the science of neuroplasticity and the nervous system through the training that I did. Because when we repeatedly engage in activities that challenge our current state, whether that's physically, mentally, or emotionally, we create new pathways in the brain. It's essentially like a muscle. The more that you work it, the stronger it gets. But it's not just about physical strength, it's about creating that level of mental resilience where you don't quit. It is said that neurons that fire together wire together, meaning that the way we think and feel repeatedly can rewire our brain entirely. But this isn't just a mental shift, it's a physical one too. Our emotional states influence our chemical balance, our emotions, and are deeply tied to the release of neurotransmitters and hormones in the body. This means that changing our thoughts alone and our emotional patterns not only rewires our brain, but it also alters our biochemistry in our entire body. So you begin to feel like a whole new person. It all came down to getting comfortable with extreme stress. So your body learns to differentiate between real threats like hitting 190 beats per minute or sitting in freezing water till you're about to die and everyday stress that we face, which really isn't stress at all. For example, ice baths activates your nervous system in a way that forces your body to adapt to extreme stress. The more you expose yourself to the cold, the more your body learns to regulate stress and discomfort. So over time, this builds extreme mental toughness. This is why I wasn't just trying to be happy or healthy. I was conditioning myself to genuinely be mentally unbreakable. It sounds very Goggins-esque, motivational, I know, but genuinely it became a mission and it still is to this very day. And I don't say this out of ego, but as a reflection of how much my mindset has evolved. After months of daily practices, I've reached a point where I can enter a meditative state pushing 170 beats per minute on the Stairmaster. I can endure 5-degree ice baths for 30 plus minutes at a time. I can hit strength PRs without anabolics and I can run 10k and kickbox too, all whilst building a new business from scratch. It's a level of productivity and discipline that I wouldn't have even thought of 12 months ago, never mind carried out. Understanding the science behind these concepts helped me so much to stay consistent. It gave me a purpose for each of the tasks I was doing, and the more I understood it, the more I could physically feel my brain altering, the more driven I became to continue. Every meditation, every breathwork session, every ice bath was rewiring my mind and building mental resilience, not just to survive, but to thrive. So to wrap this section up, it isn't just about breaking old habits or patterns, it's about intentionally creating new ones that serve the person you're becoming, not the person you once were. And as I learned, it wasn't just about the work, it was about the understanding of the science behind why it worked, which made me even more committed to the process. Rewiring your mind is a process of shifting from a passive responder to a deliberate creator of your thoughts and feelings. I began to live by one stoic quote, control the controllable, where I no longer went into an anxious frenzy when life threw things at me. I stayed calm and only stressed about what I had physical control over. Control the controllable. Remember it. Phase 4, the paradigm shift. Becoming someone new. You don't just change, you evolve into a new version of yourself. People always say to me now when they see me that I've changed, but I honestly don't even know what to call it. The rewiring of my brain was a constant pursuit, one I'll never give up on as I continue seeing the change unfold to this very day. But after 6 months of focused work, I genuinely don't even recognize my old self. The way I thought, the way I felt, it honestly makes me feel embarrassed when I think about how I handled some situations in the past. I was reacting from a place of fear, a place of insecurity. The biggest shift for me was I stopped caring what anyone else thought. And I know people say that all the time, but I genuinely mean it. I reached a point where I am just unapologetically myself. And that shift, it's not just internal, it's reflected in the work that I do now. If I stayed in the same mindset, I wouldn't have created this podcast. I wouldn't have been as open as I am now, sharing my journey, my thoughts, my growth with you all. I wouldn't have created the Coach Creator if I was still worried about what other mentors would think or what other coaches would think of me. This course is something I've poured my heart and soul into. And it's not just a course, it's the desire to change the entire education of the coaching industry itself, based on years of learning, trial and error, and refining what truly helps people to become top tier coaches themselves. It's built on principles I've applied in my own life, and I can honestly say I'm incredibly proud of what it's becoming and everyone it's already helping. Even though I understood the science behind all this, how the brain rewired itself, how the nervous system adapts, how mental resilience is built, I couldn't have told you what had actually changed in me. I could never have put it into words. But then I came across Bob Proctor's work on paradigms, and for the first time, it all made sense to me. I realized that I wasn't just changing my habits, it was genuinely an identity shift. I was changing on a subconscious level. I wasn't just learning new behaviors, I was rewriting myself on the deepest level. This is what is called a paradigm shift in psychology, and I'll generally never see life the same again. The way I think, the way I feel, the way I operate, it's completely shifted. I understand who I am now, and I do things not out of fear or what others think. I no longer make decisions based on external approval or trying to fit into someone else's mold. I have clarity, and that clarity has given me freedom that I never thought would have been possible. What truly matters is how much my values have changed, as I am no longer defined by vanity of how big my biceps are or the number in my bank account. It's all meaningless. I know that my true calling is to help educate others, to help them change their lives the way I've changed mine. This is why I'm so passionate about fitness coaching. It's why I've created the Coach Creator, and it's why I feel so much more excitement for my future right now. I'm not just here to build a business or make money. I'm here to make a real impact, to empower others to find their own transformation, just like I did. The work I'm doing now is aligned to who I've become, and it really does excite me more than I could ever imagine before. So to wrap this section up, this shift in identity doesn't just end once you feel different. It carries on into every corner of your life. You start to make decisions from a place of certainty, one of alignment. There's no more second guessing, no more striving to be someone you're not. The actions you take now are not motivated by fear or validation, but by the clarity of knowing exactly who you are and what you're here to do. The most powerful part of this shift is that it impacts every single decision you make, whether it's your relationships, your career, or your personal growth. With every single decision, you start to operate from a place of confidence, from self-worth, understanding that you're no longer trapped by your old fears or insecurities. But the beauty of this evolution is that it doesn't stop here. The paradigm shift isn't a destination, it's an ongoing process. This is where the real power lies, understanding that personal development does not have a finish line. So most people will never fully transform because they're not capable. It's because they'll never fully commit to the process. Because if you dip your toes in and out of change, you're going to stay exactly where you are. So if you're listening to this right now and thinking, this is hit home, here's the deal. Most people don't make it through this process because they refuse to fully commit. They want to change, but they're still holding on to the past. And spoiler alert, it never works. But here's the thing. If you're willing to strip everything back, sit in that uncomfortable space, and actually do the work, you can become truly unstoppable. And trust me, there is nothing more fulfilling that you can do in this life. And I can promise you of that coming out the other side. I know this one was very deep, but if this resonated with you, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know your biggest takeaway. Because this isn't just a conversation, it's a process. And if you're ready to go deeper into this mindset, please keep following along. The first episode was more about my story, but future episodes will focus on identifying the traits holding you back and how to replace them for real, lasting change. Built Different isn't just about success. It's about providing the tools, the systems and strategies to make these shifts actionable, break old patterns and upgrade who you are entirely. So where do you start? It's simple. The difference between where you are now and where you want to be is in the systems that you can create. And that's where I want to help. Through this podcast, through every actionable insight, and through every real strategy. So let's make that shift happen together. I appreciate you all. Peace out. Joe.